All right, hopefully I have everyone online can hear us now.
Okay, I'm starting it since I think we were muted there. Welcome everybody to today's meeting. We have a group of people here in person, and then we also have a good group online. Emily has checked, and we do have a quorum. Just want to thank everybody that is joining us online, and please bear with us. This is our first hybrid meeting. Hopefully things will go off okay, but you know how technology can be sometimes. Before we get started with the first agenda item, I just want to make a comment or explanation about the public comment period. We made a change to the agenda, and we've added actually an additional public comment period. The public comment period that's at the beginning of the meeting will be solely for the public to speak on items that are on today's agenda. So if you have anything to say about an item that's listed on the agenda, this would be the time. Later on at the end of the meeting, we will then have a general hearing of the public. So if you have any comments during the meeting, please hold them until then, and you'll have your chance at the end. So with that, I'd like to move on to number 2, public comment on agenda items. Is there any members of the public that want to speak on any of the items on today's agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to number 3, election of chairman emeritus. I'm not sure if you are aware, but at the last coordinating committee meeting, the coordinating committee did vote to amend the bylaws to allow the technical advisory committee to elect a chair emeritus, somebody who is no longer on the committee, but who has a wealth of knowledge to share. So at this time, I would open up the floor. Do we have any nominations for a chair emeritus?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate David Mitchell as chairman emeritus. I'll second that.
Thank you. We do have a nomination of David Mitchell for chairman emeritus. Do we have any other nominations? I'll close nominations. And since we do have a second on that nomination, then I will open it up for a vote. All in favor of David Mitchell being the chairman emeritus, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you very much for being willing to serve.
I would like to thank you. This is probably one of the most important committees in Erie County that nobody knows about. And I appreciate your leadership there. Emily has done a tremendous job over the years bringing us forward. With the new infrastructure money that's coming out, it's going to be imperative that we have all of our ducks in order, so to speak, and be able to get the money that we need for the project locally. And I have worked with the MPO for over 40 years. And I wish more people knew how important this was to the safety and just to their whole livelihoods of mobility. So I have a lot of confidence, and I thank you for your confidence in me. I do appreciate working with Emily and all of you, sharing some of my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, number 4 is the 2021. I'm sorry, should that be 2022?
No, actually it is, the 2021.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry, correct, 2021 Transportation Improvement Program.
I know last year, but
Yeah.
yes.
The tip modification, fiscal constraint cards. I'll turn it over to Brandon Beach, who I think is with us.
All right, thank you, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent, all right. Okay, so since the March 9th coordinating committee meeting, there has been 1 amendment and 10 administrative modifications to the 2021 Erie Highway Bridge tip. So if we look at the amendment there, that was an amendment to federalize and advance 2 projects, the Morehouse Road Bridge over I-90 and the SR 4104 bridge over I-79. The allotment of federal BOF funds were made available to the MPO from the passage of the IIJA or bill. And the Erie Highway Bridge line item was also used as a funding source. Both actions were approved by the Erie MPO via e-ballot on April 13th, and Federal Highway Administration approved this amendment on April 26th. So no further action is needed by the MPO, but we did want to highlight this at the meeting. Of the 10 administrative modifications, 3 of them, they're actually actions 2, 3, and 4, if Emily wants to show them. They involved cash flowing Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP funds, to the Central Bayfront project, specifically the construction phase. So this exercise involved adding the federal HSIP funds from the IIJA bill allotment that we received earlier this year for fiscal year 2022, and also use monies from the Erie Highway Bridge line item. Subsequently, Spike STP funds, State 581 funds were also moved to other phases from the construction phase onto other phases for the Bayfront project. And federal NHPP funds were then subsequently returned to the Erie Highway Bridge line item. In addition, there was also one informational item shared with the MPO. Again, doesn't involve any MPO vote or approval, but it involved the addition of also the HSIP set aside funds to US 20 Zook to Chestnut Street, and the Zook Road, Zimmerly to 26th Street projects, both in federal fiscal year 2022, so that they could be obligated this year. There was funding out in 2023 that was then cash flowed off those projects onto the statewide HSIP set aside line item. With that being said, I didn't have any other items I wanted to cover, but if anyone had any questions on those covered or ones I didn't mention, please let me know.
Thank you, Brandon. Does anybody have any questions for Brandon? Okay, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to the VIL discretionary funding, and Ronnie Bishop will handle that.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Yes, I just wanted to share some information on some of the discretionary programs that's covered under bills. So as the MPO may already know, the current notice of funding opportunity that's out for applications for the multimodal projects discretionary grant, which includes mega infra in the rural surface transportation grant programs. That notice of funding opportunity for applications is out, and it closes on May 23rd. And all the links that I'll mention, I'll put in the chat, and I will also email them to Emily so she has them and can distribute it out. But I wanted to make that note, and there's I also have the link that talks about future anticipated funding opportunities for you to look at and view. And then I have a flow chart, not a flow chart, but a chart that shows many of the bill's funding programs that's under federal highways and the different entities that may be eligible to apply. So that may be super helpful for the MPO to know. What other information do I have? And just some reminders about the bill websites. They are updated frequently with information on fact sheets and guidance and regulations. So just continue to have an eye out for that. And I think that's it. Just a short and sweet overview. If anybody has any questions, of course, reach out to me or reach out through Emily. All these links I'll put in the chat, and we'll also notify Emily as well. So yeah, that's all I have. Short and sweet. So yeah, and thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Remy. Next up is the 2023 Transportation Improvement Program. I'll turn it over to Emily, who I think has a presentation for us.
Yes. Together a few slides. Transportation Improvement Program, in case you haven't, we go through the entire. So this is for the 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. So the TIP actually has 21 official parts that have to be submitted that include all of these things like the financial constraint chart, environmental justice, core elements documentation, air quality conformity, revision procedures. So all of this has to go into the TIP, and it has to go out for public comment. Very soon, there has to be a 30-day public comment period in order to be adopted on time. And for those of you who have been here for a few years, we do this every 2 years. So we update the TIP. You will see this on the odd years. So we are in 2022, updating the 2023 TIP. So in 2024, we will update the 2025 TIP. So the type, ooh, went too far. Ooh. Oh. Okay, sorry, good. Yeah, the presentation back. All right, no, it's okay. All right, so all of the federally funded projects for transportation are in the TIP. You want to stay on the slide. There we go. So looking at our highway, bridge, and transit TIP programs. The vast majority of the funds are going to pavement resurfacing. So these are maintenance items. These aren't building new things. It's really just preserving what we have and being good stewards of asset management. So all of these projects can be seen on the PennDOT One Map website. Oh goodness, this thing is finicky. All right. All right, so talking about the funding, building off what Ronnie already said, we have IIJA and bill funding that automatically is coming to the Erie MPO. So that has extremely helped us from the projection in 2023. So that, let's see if I can do this. The yellow bar is where we were predicted to be with the IIJA bill funding. We are much higher. However, we are still not to the place we were looking at our 2021 TIP. So we had about $20,000 or $20 million more in the 2021 TIP. So all of that other IIJA bill funding that everyone's been talking about and Monique was talking about is discretionary and has to be applied for. So I'm really hoping that we can apply for more of these grants that are coming out, but we're not automatically getting them. So just overall for this TIP, we have the total highway bridge funding that is in our TIP is over 100 million. It was about 120 million before. So that's over 4 years, 101 million. And the total funding, including the interstate projects and transit, is over $300 million. So there is a lot of money on this TIP, but it still is not going to match all of the needs out there. So we still need to go out and try to get some of these discretionary federal grants. So another thing I wanted to touch on in the TIP documents was the memorandum of understanding or the TIP revision procedures. I know this is very technical, this technical document, but it really shows what the MPO does. It shows what the MPO can vote on specifically. So any projects that are federally funded, the MPO can vote on. It must vote, the MPO must vote for any projects that have a $2 million federal change to them that result in an air quality conformity reevaluation or result in the change of scope on a federally funded project that is significant enough to constitute a new project. So new projects with federal funds, removing projects with federal funds, or adding a phase with federal funds requires an MPO vote. We also have this note in our MOU right now, which says the Erie MPO can request a vote on any controversial project that has federal funding on it. So if there is something that you see as board members that you do not agree with or have questions about that's happening on these fiscal constraint charts that deals with federal funds, the MPO can vote and say no. The MPO has the power to say no to PennDOT and the feds that this is not happening, or that a project in turn is going forward with federal funds. So the MPO has that power, and it's defined here in this document. So I know we tweaked this before. I think the threshold for voting was higher a few years ago, so now it's down to $2 million and change. So $2 million of federal funding change that requires an MPO vote. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew about this document and everyone was comfortable with these thresholds. So those were the things I wanted to touch on in that TIP document. If anyone has any questions about the projects or any of the funding, we can definitely about them now. We have lots of other people in the room that know about the TIP as well. So does anyone have any questions on the TIP?
Emily, I'd like to make two comments. The first is that the note that you mentioned at the bottom, I guess, as you discussed, like that would be include federal funding, and that the words federal funding is at the top there. Does that apply to the note below? Is that kind of how we interpret that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So if a project is 100% state funded, the MPO can vote, but the state has power over those funds. I will say there aren't that many 100% state funded things on our TIP, but there are a few. They have to be significant regional projects to make it onto the TIP. So things like plowing, the normal things that deals with don't come onto the TIP. Normal PennDOT maintenance that is 100% state funded normally doesn't even come.
And then the other comment I just wanted to make was the slide on the funding and the comparison, the bar chart of the 2021 TIP to the projected 23 TIP to the current. It's those numbers seem. I just wanted to make sure we weren't that we were all on the same page. That number of 120 plus million, I suspect might include regional. It might include discretionary funds like Bayfront project.
Yes.
So
yeah,
Not
so this is, if you look at the TIP, the actual TIP document, there is fiscal, which is in the TIP document, which is of our base fund and the discretionary. So that is the source of this of the funding. So in 2021, yes, our base funds are pretty much the same. We did have more discretionary funds in 2020. Yes, you're exactly right. So we need to get more discretionary funds in order to match where we were back then. Yes.
Just a quick question, the interstate tip. Is that mostly federal funds?
It is both federal and state funds.
What kind of percentage on the balance?
Between state and federal, I don't know off the top of my head statewide. Since the interstate tip is statewide, I don't know what the breakdown is between the two. We can find that out.
No, it's not important. Let's have a very high funding of those projects towards the state's funding. And that doesn't really affect our local as far as our funding base, or does it?
No, the interstate tip is funded off of the top of the tip. So they take the funding for the interstate tip and then they allocate the rest of the funds to the individual planning partners. So the interstate funding, unless we fund a project on the regional tip, that is handled out of central office, and they control the movement of those funds on the interstate. So they actually, with our MOU, those would be a non-voting issue because they come from a statewide funding source instead of the regional funding source.
Thank you.
So one question, and I just wanted to put this out there, just so we can discuss it to make sure that I'm on the same page with everyone as we go forward with the MOU and that note. I just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with, as we put a project on the tip when we start it, if there was a way for us when we're going into the 2023 tip, if there's a new project, we put it on the tip, to be upfront about whether or not we think it is going to be controversial as we move into it, so that as we move funds, we could allocate how much time it would take just to add a vote and everything that would need to be. I understand that if we go and we look at adding a project and we need to go through the vote, we're going through a vote anyways, if we're using the federal funds, and then we can determine that. But as we get into where a project goes on, if a board member sees a project they feel might be controversial and they want us to discuss it more or to go forward with a vote, to let us know as soon as possible so that we can incorporate that time as a part of all of the funding discussions that we have. So that would just be my big request there.
And thank you, Courtney. And I will say our District 1 people are very good at foreseeing a lot of these projects. So it usually doesn't have to happen. We don't usually use that clause, but it is there in case something does happen. So it is out for, we do have to adopt the MOU with the tip. So it is out for public comment. People can comment if you have issues with the MOU, if there's something, if you want a higher or lower threshold for voting, you can comment on that too. It is the MOU of the MPO. I guess I would ask, is everyone comfortable with the $2 million threshold for votes? Or would anyone like to discuss it? We don't have to vote on it today. That'll be the coordinating committee, but is everyone comfortable with that amount?
I think we've had discussions probably 3 or 4 years ago about it. I can remember going down at the bayfront there. I think we discussed it quite thoroughly then.
Yes, and I know that the statewide MOU is actually moving to 3 million. So we would still be keeping it lower as a region. The greater than 2,000, but 200,000, but less than 1 million is actually moving to a higher dollar threshold statewide. I would say, for us, if you guys wanted to keep it at 2 million, that is perfectly acceptable. 2 million has not been any sort of an issue. And that 2 million is really only if the project is not already on the tip. So if we are adding if we're not adding a project, we're increasing a phase by $2 million. Chances are that's only going to be a construction phase. And if we have that 2 million, we're going to be talking about that increase here anyways. Anything over $1 million, we have to submit a request for central office for permission to add. So we would be notifying you guys anyway. So it just wouldn't be a formal vote. We would still be discussing it quite thoroughly.
Okay, any other committee members with questions or comments on the 2023 TIP? Okay, hearing none, I believe we need a vote. Emily, will the vote be to forward this for public comment?
Yes.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to forward the 2023 TIP for public comment.
Harbor Creek will make that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Like to take a vote to forward the 2023 TIP for public comment. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have discussion of local federal aid route guidance. Emily reporting, and wants to kick it off.
Real quick, do you want to announce when the local library?
Yes, I can do that. So let me go back to the beginning. So our public comment period will now be May 12th through June 10th. The public meetings will be held on July 1st. So there will be 2 meetings. One will be June 1st, sorry.
No problem. No problem.
June 1st. The virtual option will be from 10 to noon. And then we'll have an in-person meeting from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Velasco Memorial Library. That will be going forward now, and I will be sending out information on the public comment period now that it is official. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, federal aid route guidance.
So as most of you know, there are certain roads that are locally owned by municipalities that are eligible for federal aid. There is a $500,000 line item currently in our TIP each year to fund those roads. So our process has been that municipalities apply, and then PennDOT will drive around and judge the condition of the roads. And they will be ranked according both to ADT and condition, and funds will be awarded. So what has come to our attention as this process has been going along is that some of the projects will come in under bid, and there's no, money is getting lost because the federal funds need to be obligated within a certain time frame. So it might be $20,000, $30,000, but they still get lost because they can't be assigned to another project in time because we're on this tight 1-year schedule. So with conversations with me, I wanted to bring up to this group the possibility again of making it a 2-year application cycle. I know we talked about this quite a bit before, and that roads deteriorate differently each year, but money is getting stuck on the table because we don't have enough time to process those projects. So, Courtney, do you want to add to this?
Sure. Definitely. So we were having multiple conversations. We did run into a particular project that came in about $20,000 under what the grant was awarded for the road. And because we weren't entirely sure if those monies would be needed, we left them on the project. They weren't needed. They were spent statewide, they just weren't spent on local federal aid route in Erie. And so it led to a discussion of how do we ensure that those things don't happen, or that we're at least all on the same page as we move forward with local federal aid routes, which led to a couple different questions that we wanted to put forth for discussion. One of them is, would we be better to look at it at a 2-year period? The Northwest currently does do it on a 2-year period. It allows us to cash flow our projects between the 2 years, and then they can be let either year, however the municipality would like that to occur. And then that allows us to have some flexibility in moving those funds around, so that that issue of losing funds or leaving them on a project will be less likely to occur. No matter what, if we decide that we are going to go 2 years or not, another question then comes into, if a municipality comes and they ask for, let's just say, $100,000 to do their particular road, they are awarded a grant up to $100,000. But let's just say that the low bid plus inspection comes in at $80,000. Do we then change that grant to $80,000 because that is what the low bid plus inspection came in at? Or were they awarded the $100,000 in case something goes over cost during the course of construction? Because that also then changes, when do we remove the money and move it around? So are we allowing a municipality to spend up to their ask that they are granted? Or are we limiting it to what the low bid plus inspection comes in at, no higher than what the grant is? And then, you know, depending on what we feel with those two, then determines future conversations about when do we decide if we're going to award another project for that kind of, you know, that kind of a discussion. But those were really the two big asks that we had for the committee. Would the committee be willing to consider going to a 2-year to allow us more flexibility in time frame and getting agreements and everything out, as well as are we looking at awarding up to the grant, or are we looking at changing that to low bid plus inspection, no more than the grant award? So, I think that two big things.
So right now, the program is $500,000 a year to line it. So would the 5B, then it would be $1 million
Every 2
every
years.
2 years that you could apply for. And the municipality could choose to do the project in the first year if they were able to let it.
Yeah, we would cash flow it so that they could let in the first year. We would look at doing it, ideally, we would be looking at this year, asking for, you know, if we were to do it, we would ask this year for all submissions for the next 2 years. So we would award projects to be let in 23 or 24. The municipality can decide, and then we would work on getting all of the agreements and everything done in year one, no matter what. And it would be, I think we have it at $500,000, or half of the $500,000 currently goes towards projects that have less than 3,346 ADT, and half of the money goes towards roads that have less than 3,346. So it would be $500,000 for each.
And I know that conversation in the past has been that, you know, this program can be difficult sometimes because in order to win a grant, you have to have a road that's in really bad condition. And then that road kind of has to sit, you either have to make a choice of whether you want to spend maintenance funds holding it up when you know it's going to replace. So my concern was adding an additional year, but if the municipality can still decide to do the project in the following year, and then that would allow any unused funds to fall off to year 2, that could be reassigned to the second project. Did anybody from the committee have any questions or any comments on that?
I'll make a comment. This program's been evolving over the last several years to the point where it is now, and I think it's to the point where it works very well. And these couple of proposed changes would not be advantageous to the city of Erie. I think it's good the way it is.
Thank you.
I'll make a comment. I like the proposed changes.
I don't know if anybody heard that, but Tim Hay mentioned people like those changes. Emily, this would be a vote for the coordinating committee, is that correct?
It would be to make a recommendation to the coordinating
You would
committee.
ask that we.
Yes.
Okay.
As the technical advisory committee, what would you advise? The coordinating committee?
I comment on that, Mr. Hall.
Please.
I think in between, probably Emily, you and John should have a discussion about minor points of why they feel that this is not be a good change. I don't know if you had that or not.
I have not with John.
It might be good to go through specifically with John and find out what the city of Erie's concerns are. Just a thought.
Yes, and I'm happy to reach out and we can talk about the specific impacts on your federal aid routes in the city. Because I think actually at the time that there was about $20,000 that got stuck on the table with the obligation cycles could have gone to the city of Erie project, but there just wasn't time to create any project, have a clear vote, and then go through all of the process of local letting before the funds would expire. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, without any further discussion, then do I have a motion to recommend that to the coordinating committee that this program be changed to a 2-year program?
So moved. I'll second.
And can I have a vote, please? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have made that recommendation to the coordinating committee. Next business, the 12th Street Reimagined Transportation and Land Use Study.
Yes, I wanted to mention that the city of Erie was awarded a supplemental study grant for the 12th Street Reimagined project that Kathy Rosnick presented to the group last fall. So that will be added to our UPWP. So as soon as that is approved, the amended budget is approved, it will be lumped into our Unified Planning Work Program or UPWP. So congratulations to the city. And look forward to working on that study going forward.
A quick question about the local federal aid grant that Brian just brought up. Did we want to have a discussion about whether or not we want to proceed with leaving it at, after a project is let, it's low bid plus inspection that the project was awarded, or if we are going to leave on the table up to that grant amount? And I guess I should also throw this scenario out there because we actually ran into it this particular year with the bids that we received. So some of the problems we run into with this program is if one municipality has 2 roads that are awarded, are they getting X number for one road and Y for the other? Are they allowed to use it if we let them together or both? We're running into a lot of questions as we move forward with the local federal aid routes. And so to be as transparent as possible with them, we just want to make sure that both committees are aware and that we are moving forward in the direction that you guys want when we're discussing that. In the end, it's probably not going to really matter a whole lot for the 2 that we have this year because one is actually going to be, both of them are going to be over what their grant amount was. But the situation that Emily was talking about, it was an instance where they asked for an amount for their estimate for their grant. That's how much we left on there. And then their low bid plus inspection came in under. And so we left it there in case it was needed. So do we want to continue to do that to allow the flexibility of the municipality if something was missed when it was designed and it came out, or something was found when they were actually doing a construction project? Or do we want to put the responsibility on making sure the design is done correctly? And then when that low bid plus inspection comes in, and we do it at a 15% inspection, we do adequate amount for, should be for inspection. Do we want to lower it to that to allow us the flexibility of giving another municipality potentially money towards a local federal aid route? And I don't have an answer.
I would just suggest and think about it, you know, we've got tons of projects on the tip. We do this all the time. If it's a state funded project, when those bids come in, that's a point where we say low bid plus inspection is the amount for this project. You know, we have competitive bidding, so we kind of trust in that number. As you're approaching the project, of course, everybody knows estimates are tough, you know, so we do the best we can with what we've got. But once you get bids, we generally know what inspection is. Yes, I guess for our projects, we don't leave fluff for in case this or that. We kind of cut it off, move those excess funds elsewhere. And then if you know, we know that things can come up, but our construction unit does a really good job of controlling those costs, trying to make sure there's balance if they have to work order for some reason unforeseen. And then sometimes, you know, if we see something here in construction, there's an increase that we just couldn't prevent. So, you know, in kind of weighing like what Courtney's discussing here, just like the changing to a 2-year method, there's pros and cons to both, for sure. My recommendation, I think PennDOT's recommendation would be to use that low bid plus inspection as the amount. The money then would go to other, like we said, back to the local federal aid route line item. If there's time, or, you know, straight to another project if there's a need or something like that.
Any discussion on that, or any questions or comments?
I guess the question, if there was money for another project, would it be going to the next project ranked, or would it be opened up again? Or
We have discussed going to the next project rank. So because we also broke it out into the higher than the 3,346 ADT or less than, if the project that the money is coming off of is for one of the higher ADT ones, it would go to the next rank higher ADT. If it was a lower one, it would go to the next rank lower. If there was no next rank lower in that area, it would go to the next rank lower in the other. Would kind of be how we would look at doing it. That would be the benefit of going to a 2-year cycle, because that would then allow us to move that back to a line item without the risk of losing the money or putting it on another project. And then we would have months to be able to get that project out the door if the other municipalities chose to let their projects in the first year of the TIP. So we would be doing, with a 2-year program, we would be doing local federal aid routes as we were doing TIP implementation for the next one. We would be following the same time frame moving forward.
Any other questions? Are you looking for a recommendation from us for that, or are we just gonna kind of summarize that with coordinating committee, and we can talk about that?
So vote would be with the coordinating committee. So we just really wanted it out there so people could be thinking about it before the next meeting. And I won't be there in person at next month's meeting, but I'll be logging on. So that way then if there's any discussions, I'll be there for the vote and for this discussion.
And then maybe if you would be able to put together just a little summary of what we're discussing as far as the 2-year program, and when we kind of funding on. Okay, so everybody can understand. Any other business?
Well, the one thing I also wanted to mention, since we're talking about the local federal aid route again, is that those rural surface transportation federal grants that Ronnie mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, those So all the local federal aid routes qualify for that funding. Other roads can qualify as well if they're connected to an economic system or a regional hub. Those are due May 23rd. So if you have a local federal aid route that you really want to get paved, I would recommend applying for both our federal aid route money as well as the federal aid route, but in the federal aid route money. But that is all I have. So.
Okay. Thank you. I guess we'll move on into hearing the public. Is there anybody who would like to make any comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, then move on. The next meeting, Emily, is that at the intermodal? Is that correct?
That is actually still here, since we're very new to this hybrid setup. We're going to do it here since this seemed to kind of work. And then move to the intermodal once we get this hybrid situation working. So we will be here.
So the next meeting will be a coordinating committee, will be June 22nd at 10 a.m. here at the Summit Township Municipal Building. Okay, with that, then I will call for a motion to adjourn. Okay. Second?
Second.
We are adjourned.
If whoever's on the call with the phone number could just tell me who they are, I can get that for attendance.
It ends in 2801.
That's Danny Duran with the MTA.
And
All right, thank you, everybody.
so she.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
like me. I totally understand that.